Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our meeting here for the European Heart, the Green Heart in Hesse, here in the representation of Hesse in the EU. First of all, we will hear Mr. Weinmeister, Secretary of State. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much for greeting me. I greet you all for our meeting here for the strategy of the forests in order to understand how important this is for the economy, but also for the green part. And I'm happy that my colleague is today here, and he will talk about the forests. And we also have Mrs. Preising from the Commission here. Thank you also, Mrs. Schulten, to you, because you are our facilitator. I'm coming from the north of Hesse. Hesse has a lot of forests. 42% is woods, and this is something very particular. And in the north of Hesse, we have parts where we reach even plus 50% of forests, and this is something very, very important for our region and for our people, for our youth. And the forest is very important. We are talking about CO2, we talk about biodiversity in our forests, but we also talk about the questions of using raw materials, and wood is obviously very important, obviously also in construction. And we also see it as a part where people can recharge their batteries, because the forest has really a very important meaning. And therefore, there's so many different parts, and we have to put everything together. And therefore, we have a study from the Commission. We will talk about it. And I would like to ask you, we have to be careful to balance everything. And we need a European strategy for the forests. We have to talk about it, to discuss it, but we have also to be careful because the different parameters in the different regions should not lead to the fact that everything will be put into one pot. And we have worked for 300 years, and the people that are working in the forests know very well how this is working. And as I said, it's different in the different parts of Hesse. And therefore, it's necessary that we have possibilities also if we want to use the forests and the woods differently. And we have to get people on board because the biggest part of the woods is in our own, let's say, of the region, but there are also many small owners of woods, and we have to accompany them, and we want to have them at our side, and therefore it's very important, it's very interesting. And Mr. Kara already said, climate protection, biodiversity is the most important point, but we shouldn't forget the social and economic part. And there in the European Union, we have to listen to the people, because we are also talking about subsidiarity. And in Hesse, we did many things in order to protect our forests and to make the woods fit. But the way isn't an easy one, and I'm really looking forward to to the discussion here for our woods in Hesse. Therefore, I wish you an interesting exchange, and thank you for following our meeting here in the representation of Hesse in Brussels. Thank you very much, Mr. Weinmeister from Wiesbaden. You already said it. We have Mr. Klügels and the Secretary of State, Mr. Conz, and I have Mrs. Preising. She is Vice President for the with Mr. Sinkevičius, and Mr. Conz is working in Wiesbaden. I give the floor to both of them, but before I do so, I would like to say that you can obviously ask your questions. We have now the email. You can send them on the mail, or even you can choose to do it via phone. Now, Mr. Conz, please. Mr. Conz, you are right. Before we start with everything, we have some impressions what we are talking about. We have nice pictures from the woods in Hesse. Thank you for reminding me.
Die Buchenwälder, ein europäisches Phänomen. Einst von der Eiszeit aus Mitteleuropa verdrängt, sind sie in ihre Heimat zurückgekehrt und breiten sich weiter aus. So schafften sie es bereits bis nach Südschweden und England. In Deutschland gibt es nur noch wenige naturbelassene Buchenwälder. Sie bieten Lebensraum für eine faszinierende Artenvielfalt.
They give food and a playing field.
Regen, Schnee,
Rain, snow, sun,
Schatten, Wind.
shade, and wind.
Buchenwälder sind anpassungsfähig.
Our woods can adapt
Buchenwälder
themselves.
sind wahre
They are
Überlebenskünstler.
able to survive.
Unaufhörlich streben sie nach vorne.
They go ahead,
Probieren aus, was
try
möglich
out
ist,
what is
und
possible,
gehen dabei bis an
and
ihre Grenzen.
go up to their limit.
Das Wasser ist zugleich Grundlage
Water
und
is also the
Barriere
basis, but
in der
also a
Ausbreitung
barrier
der
as
Buchenwälder.
far as the extension of these woods is concerned.
Buchenwälder sind Orte voller
These
Leben.
woods are full with life,
Orte des Kräftemessens,
where you can
Schutzes,
measure your strengths,
des
where you have
Rückzugs.
protections, where you can retire.
Sie stecken voller Überraschungen.
They are full with surprises.
Schützen bedeutet
Protect
zulassen.
means that we allow something.
Das Wachsen und Werden sich selbst überlassen.
Growing bigger on your own
Der Natur ihren Frieden gewähren.
and give peace to nature
Ihren eigenen Rhythmus
and
respektieren.
an own rhythm that has to be respected. Now, I promised you Mr. Conz, and he will have the floor now with some impressions from Hesse and the woods in the Hesse. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mrs. Schulten, and welcome once again. We have seen wonderful pictures from the woods in Hesse, which we also see a lot of animals, and this is something that is touching, and we might have shown a film of woods that are dying, and we have more than 70,000 acres that are destroyed by the climate change. Now, both things are touching. We are emotional in the one way or the other, because Mr. Weinmeister said a lot of people want to go into the woods in order to relax, and they now see that things are changing. This is very important for Hesse. And as Mr. Weinmeister said, we have the biggest part of the woods in Hesse, and therefore we are questioning ourselves, how do we treat the forest? And this is already the single tree that is important. There is nothing that isn't discussed. We were talking about 100 trees that are ill, and we are discussing it, and then we also have to see how do we treat our woods, how would we go ahead, and we are obviously also discussing about the woods on a European level, and therefore I'm happy that Mrs. Preising is here, what the Commission has as proposals and how we want to use and treat our woods. And I would also like to say that we are very happy that the Commission came into this discussion and wants to discuss the woods. It's something very important. It's not related to one nation. It's related to all people in the world. It's really a question if we will have still air we can breathe, and we should not only leave this to the experts, we have to discuss it in a very broad way, and therefore we are very happy to discuss the wood strategy. In Hesse, we wanted to go ahead because we see it as a very important question, and we discuss very often about the woods in Southern America and how dreadful it is, because we see how the rainforest is destroyed. But always when we say to the others, that's not okay, others are pointing their finger on us. And in Germany, we had cut our woods twice, and this is the basis also for our wells, and therefore we should protect the woods and not only point the finger out to others. And we, and representation of Hesse, we have 10%, we have more or less 4% that is not used. We want to arrive at 5% because we want to go ahead. And on the other hand, we are convinced that we need the part where we can make experiments. We have to give nature the opportunity to show us what the woods will do, because we need the genetic variety in our woods, and we want to see what nature is doing with this. And then we have 95% of woods where we have a sustainable treatment, and we have very clear rules for this, and we don't want to cut a whole wood, and everybody has to make plans for his own wood, and therefore guarantee sustainability. And we have many opportunities for people who are owning woods, and we have a clear hierarchy, and we want biodiversity and climate protection. This is very important in other woods. There are many small steps, and we have a certification, and we check in our woods if we do what we are asking for, and we have a control in the woods so that we can check where we have a deficit and where things are going better than what we thought from the beginning. As you see, we are well prepared to the discussion, and we are confident in this discussion. But on the other hand, we do see that the big damages I have talked about, as a rich region, is something already very important. We have to create the new woods, and for those who have woods, we give maps what might be the right, what would be the right mix of trees, but this is obviously something that goes beyond our means, and therefore we are also hoping that we can do this also as a continent in the future. And therefore I'm very happy that also the Commission also entered in this discussion in order to invest in the woods. So thank you very much once again that you came here, that we can discuss everything, that we can look at the woods, because we need to create awareness. Thank you very much.
Eine Schicksalsfrage für Hessen, auch eine
This is, of course, a key question for Hessen, for Europe. Well, yes, it's a very important question, as you mentioned, and I thank you very much for the invitation as well. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I thank you for the great video that we've seen and for the great introduction. It feels good to hear from someone that's done a lot of work, that already implemented many things that we encourage people to do in our forest strategy. That's the whole point of the strategy. But to get back to what you've mentioned, I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great thing that we are discussing the forests here, because everybody is connected to the forests in some way. Forests have inspired painters and writers and authors for many years. Everyone enjoys being in the forest, and we've known for a long time that the forests are our ally in the fight against climate change. and produce a lot of raw materials for socio-economic activities, which we of course also have to take into account. So the public debate is gaining ground. This is a good thing that there's more public attention for this. This is not only limits to forestry and forest management, that even politicians don't look into the topic of forests, which is why I appreciate this debate happening today so much, because I don't think it could have taken place in this way 3 or 4 years ago. The forest strategy that we've presented has been presented a few months ago already. It was presented in July, and this is a proposal by the Commission in order to encourage debate. And we want to encourage certain key aspects. The strategy doesn't come from nowhere, and it's not our first forest strategy. We've had a previous forest strategy that was designed in 2013. But of course, the public debate, the situation as a whole, and the acceleration of climate change, as well as public perception of all those factors, has drastically changed. And the damages that have been done to the forests have heavily increased. So it was very important to create a new up-to-date forest strategy. And this new forest strategy is based on a huge public consultation that did come from nowhere either. It took 1.5 years and is based on scientific results and on facts and on a very strong basis of public consultation. And all of this has clearly shown 2 things that you have already mentioned, Mr. Conz. Firstly, the fact that there's a multifunctionality in forests that we have to take into account. This is a very important guideline in the strategy, and one of our core tasks is to strengthen the forests, to strengthen their robustness, their resiliency, in order to enable the forests to survive, to stay our ally in the fight against the loss of biodiversity and in the fight against climate change. Forests are not as healthy as many think, as other member states may think. Forested surfaces have increased in recent years. That's a positive trend. But this has slowed down in the last 10 years, and the quality of the forests is not where it should be, where we would like it to be. There are, of course, strong difference between regions, even within Germany. And I think the core goal that we follow with this strategy is to present measures in order to increase the quantity and the health of the forests. Because the strategy is a list of measures. There are non-binding measures, there are proposals for binding measures, proposals for all levels, be it on the local, regional, national or European level. There's really a whole package of proposals, measures and actions that we propose and suggest in order to make the forests more resilient, more robust in being our ally and our friend and partner in the fight against the loss of biodiversity and climate change. And most of you, I assume, have read the forest strategy, so I will not really go into the details of that strategy, but the multifunctionality aspect is an important through line, and I think it is very clearly identifiable when reading this document. Of course, nobody's questioning the socio-economic importance of forests. We have 4 million people working in the forestry and forest industry, if you also count transformative industries. But it's important to look at the different possibilities here to have a more sustainable forest management. This, of course, means that people working on this need support, need to be encouraged to continue this important work. And the second pillar, of course, is the protection of the forests, where we very strongly emphasize that primary forests, original forests, have to be protected. There's only 3% of forests in Europe fall into this category, but they have a very important significance as a CO2 sink. And we have to cooperate with the member states in order to strengthen these forests. There's, like I said, a very long list and a whole catalogue of measures that is currently being discussed, and we hope that this will be an ignition, will be a kickstart for these important measures, because we've worked with everyone, all the relevant commissioners, all the relevant authorities, because it was more or less relegated to the agricultural field. But now times have changed, so now we have spoken with colleagues in the units for environment, for climate. And this is no longer relegated or subdivided excessively in just something that is only of concern to people working in agriculture. This is important to everyone, and we hope that the Parliament and the Council will also understand this, and that we all tackle this together and do not just limit this to only one group of experts, because otherwise this cannot succeed. Now, you've said that you're not going to name individual measures in detail, but I think it would be good if you could maybe explain to us briefly what's new in this forest strategy and what this will mean for the owners of European forests, because these are partially under public ownership and partially under private ownership. Well, the strategy is based on two pillars. You have the socio-economic pillar, where we try to make forest management, forest use, to promote sustainable use of forests, of the wood in the forest as well, to really encourage the most sustainable use possible. The well-known cascade principle, in order to really use the wood and the carbon within it for products that are long-lasting, in order to not just waste the very important CO2 sink that is the forest. And of course the forest owners, and as we mentioned, 60% of forests in Europe are privately owned, so these are really the people we are directly talking to, have to be given the tools and instruments in order to walk this road, in order to make sustainable forest use profitable as well. Second aspect is bioenergy. We have very ambitious goals for this as far as renewable energies are concerned, and wood is one of those sources. We have to be very careful to make sure that wood is used in a sustainable way, if it's used as a fuel, in order to avoid solving one problem on the one hand and creating other problems on the other hand, be it in biodiversity or just by destroying carbon sinks. And we really have to create win-win situations and concrete measures. Something that we hope would be interesting for private owners of forests is the aspect that in the bioeconomy, so everything that a forest produces that is not wood, it could be ecotourism, medical plants and herbs, everything that can come from the woods that is can be used, that is not wood. And there's a lot of possibilities still untapped for this, for the owners of the forests. And we, of course, have to make sure that forest owners are encouraged to do this, that we can't expect this to happen just out of kindness. It has to be profitable to invest into the forest, in biodiversity, in the forest as our ally against climate change. And we try to create margins here. There are funds available for this as part of the common agricultural policy that have not been entirely used up. They are part of the strategic plans for the common agricultural policy that could be applied to the forests. And we actively encourage member states to create models for forest owners that involve a form of direct payment for their efforts for the forests and the conservation and protection of those forests. There are good and strong models in other member states that work quite well and are very interesting, especially for smaller forest owners. And there, of course, we also encourage an exchange of best practices, and where we count on the help of the forest owners and the member states. Now, this sounds very interesting, like a lot of support from the EU Commission, but there has been a level of criticism that because there's supposed to be a new screening or monitoring procedure, meaning that on EU level new plans would be created, a forest surveillance system would be created. How do you see this proposal? Are you maybe worried, or are there concerns amongst forest owners that this might lead to a huge amount of bureaucracy? I think every time that the Commission proposes anything at all, people reflexively worry about an overwhelming burden of democracy. So I wouldn't take these concerns very seriously. We, as Germans, are very well prepared with managing data. We are not afraid of a monitoring system. And if we have the expectation that the Commission will help us with overcoming the task, we cannot expect them to not check in if it actually worked or not. And we've had a discussion across all of Europe about the forest in Romania and about harvesting wood close by to national parks. There were many important discussions, but I remain very relaxed. I don't worry about forest surveillance. I think it's a good thing that forest owners heard that this strategy is linked to direct support and in finding out the best way to support them. I think this message has been clearly received, and I'm certain that they will be willing to accept certain procedures in order to allow European institutions to check if these funds have been well used. Farmers are used to this. They're complaining about this a little as well, but this is, of course, I think these worries will be calmed down simply once it becomes clear how exactly this is going to be done. It could be satellite-based, where you don't have to count your trees by yourself in your forest, but because this is just a satellite image and you will just be informed and you can see the result, and everything would be completely transparent, and I think it will remain within reason. I think it will be more interesting to look at how can we find tools and instruments that take into account of the fact that that forests have very long cycles. In agriculture, you have a year-long cycle, but in a forest, if a forest is dead now, it'll take 120 years to have a fully grown forest in that place. And how you can link this to funding that are planned in 5-year, 7-year steps is also a complicated and interesting question that we're also discussing. How can we tackle this? Because we have, for example, contract-based nature conservation models, but it's very difficult to organize this in a way that makes sense for such long periods of time. Now, briefly and concretely, what kind of support could you imagine that would work in the state of Hessen that would come directly from the European Union? Well, there would be 3 or 4 pillars that we are promoting that we're not, where our work may still not be perfect on it either, but we're promoting and we're supporting reforestation, because many have lost all of their forest and there is no capital, and they know for the next 60, 70, 80 years this will not generate any yields. So creating an incentive that they may not choose the type of tree that grows the fastest, but trees that we want there for reasons of biodiversity. And we have to create state-funded financial incentives. This makes sense. And if you look at the habitats according to the Flora-Fauna Habitat Directive, there always has to be a certain percentage of old trees in these habitats, which can generate support. And there are others who are willing to just leave their forests to the wilds as part of the wildlife fund. And then there are, of course, you need to have also just safety measures. Due to climate change, trees can die and fall on the highway, for instance. And what Ms. Preising has mentioned earlier as well is very important. Like, how can we properly reasonably value these efforts for the ecosystem? How can we reward owners for participating in creating these areas of rest that create fresh air, that function as a carbon sink. That is still being discussed. It will be very interesting to see what other countries have found in this and to have a common European approach. Thank you very much. Now, I just heard satellite surveillance of forests. Now, this sounds very interesting. I would like to hear from Ms. Preising what I have to imagine for this, what this actually means, and what you could. And follow-up question: national forestry plans. Why are these needed from the point of view of the Commission? Just in order to really avoid you from worrying too much, we are not setting up a completely planned economy or have surveillance, full and total surveillance systems. So the words from the English original sounds a little harsher in German, because monitoring and reporting sound relatively relaxed compared to the German equivalents. And this is really very similar to what we're already using. Copernicus and Galileo allow us to use satellite pictures from space that are monitoring everything. And these are very useful and impressive pictures, and the data that are generated with us do already exist. We just have to use them for proper purposes. And what we are trying to do is to have impact assessments for a proposal, an initiative proposal for this kind of monitoring reporting, and many support this. Many actually demanded this, and because there are so many gaps, every member state and even regions in the more federal states have data, are monitoring their forests, and are already doing parts of this, but it's a bit of a patchwork. It's full of gaps and overlaps as well, and it's not efficient at all. And those who are afraid of an overly heavy burden of useless bureaucracy, no, that's exactly to the contrary. The point is making things more efficient, improve things where data are missing. And to get back to the other question of why we need this, why strategic plans are needed or necessary, there are many member states and regions that are already doing this, especially if we have public forest ownership. That's a thing that they're already doing. And on a European level, we have to be aware that we have the shared goal of improving the state of forests and to extend and expand our forests, but we do not quite have the criteria to know, are we actually managing this? Are we getting closer to a goal? What's still missing? Where do we still have to make improvement? And that's the point of the strategic plans. But let me just assuage your concerns. This is not a planned economy. The idea really is simply to leave a lot of flexibility to the member states, how they will develop their own strategic plans. If they do this on a national or on a regional level, is completely up to them. So the whole structure is supposed to be very, very flexible. But we think that it's necessary in order to measure our shared progress and to see where we still have to make improvements. But the data is already being aggregated. To get back to it, but like I said, it is a bit of a patchwork. There are gaps, there's overlap, and we just have to become more efficient in this. And I think it's also in the rest of the member states.
Es wurde schon ein wenig auch angesprochen von Herrn Weinmeister.
This is something Mr. Weinmeister already said. We have the forest strategy, and we have a debate about this. Everybody in the EU bubble knows what subsidiarity means. It means that you rule things on the minimum factor if you can do it at in your hometown, and then you go only ahead if you need to. Now, the subsidiarity debate is coming in here. The German minister, Mrs. Glöckner, said after the council that we don't have a centralization in the forest strategy. Now, how do you see all this? How would you explain it? I'm not afraid, and there are so many things to do in the woods that everybody will find something to do, and nobody wants to give away something. And Mrs. Glöckner is right. but it's related to the regions. We insist on it, and we are not afraid that somebody is taking something away from us. It might be positive part that in the common market we have similar rules. I'm very confident in this discussion in the forest strategy, and for other countries there will be some need to adapt things. And as far as the planning is concerned, we had planning for 10 years for everybody who is working in the forests, private or let's say on the statal level. This is something that is not worrying us. On the contrary, we all need, as a continent, to talk about the woods, and we should be able to live with these things. Because we have common goals, and therefore we should also have a common monitoring. Thank you very much. And obviously, I give the question also to the Commission. What do you say about this discussion about subsidiarity? Well, I can say the same thing. We don't want to have a planned strategy. We don't want to have a common forest treaty or policy. We don't want that, and it's clear that at the European level we have different competences in many parts where the woods are very, very important and where we already are working. It might be the development, the climate goals. The woods are very important in many things, and therefore we have already laws, and the European Court says clearly that we have a divided competency, and therefore I have to say that the subsidiarity principle is one of the most important principles of the EU, and in the Commission we have really detailed descriptions when we how we can check how we can stick to subsidiarity, and I can guarantee you all that we stick to it, that we look clearly at it. As Mr. Conz said, our internal but also our international goals are important. The woods are very important, so that in many fields we are already active, already in the past, and we don't want to have a common forest strategy or something like that. Well, this is comforting. We always hear about what Mr. Weinmeister also said, that you need a balance, and with a balance you need the balance between the different interests. On the one hand, the climate protection, and on the other side, the wood economy, people who are earning their outcome from the woods. And how would you get that balance? Well, this is something essential. It is the important part of our strategy. And without this balance, we can't go ahead with the whole project, because in order to protect the woods and to have more climate resistance, it can work only if I take those by the hand that are involved and that are working and living with the woods. And therefore, this is very important for us. And I have to admit, from my perspective, what we tried with the strategy to have this balance, a balance that in the past was more social and economic. The climate debate is not that old, and what we really tried is to have a balance so that the criteria and the whole part of sustainability is put at the same level, let's say, and it shouldn't become the contrary. But we are accompanied with all these people. We are really taking care not to make that happen. And when we have our wood strategy of now, refer to the past, we have new aspects that are part of the whole, but the balance in between the different pillars is very important. And without those who are involved, we can't do anything. This is the same thing just also in fisheries or in for the farmers. We have the same debates, we have the same difficult discussions in this context, and it's very similar. We have a transition for a more sustainable treatment, and this is something going on the long term with changes that have to be explained, and sometimes we also have to balance it, but we need to find this balance. Now I'm asking Mr. Conz in order to know if you have this balance for climate protection, but I also have a question from somebody who is following us, Michael von der Tann. He is saying it is important that the de minimis rule is important when you talk about financing. I don't know if you want to take this home. I can quickly say something, and I'm happy that Mr. von der Tann is watching us. It is very important because it's not useful when we have investments with the sums we are talking about, reforesting, if this is under the de minimis, and this has worked. It took some time longer, and we managed anyhow, and this is something that we have to consider in the conditions we had in the last dry years in Germany, where we had so many woods that were destroyed, and we have to tackle with this. But now we realized and we managed to do this, and this is something that we have to do also in the future, because otherwise for the owners who have bigger woods, this is something they need for their survival. And multifunctionality is to do this with the planning, and we see it when we see our plans for the forests, that this is a very important element together with multifunctionality, so that every part has his importance. And Mrs. Streckis she wants to ask about the strategy. What can you do in order to have enough people working in the woods, because many people now are retired, and she says that the woods would be completely different from what we have seen at that beautiful video before. Now, we three are here in Brussels, and obviously in such a meeting we should show our country from the nice side. So therefore I apologize. I already said at the beginning that we have other images of the woods and the forests, and many people are really worried about this. And as far as Hessen Forest is concerned, what I can say here, in the last year we tried to, we have people that are fixed now, and they will stay and will be working for us in the official sector. We have 220 people more that otherwise we couldn't have taken, and we also tried a third part for those who still enter, because these people are not falling just down from the heavens, they have all to study, and we have a lot of signals, and we have also adapted the fees they receive, and this is very important because we did a lot, a whole package of measures so that in future we will have the people we need in order to follow our woods and take care of our woods, and we have to see what will be happening, and we should have a direct look because we see single parts of the woods are different than others, and that means that we have to be very careful, and that we need a lot of co-workers, and therefore all the measures we are talking about right now. Now, Mrs. Preisinger, you get question 2. Mr. Hartung, he is working in Hessen, and he is asking, Europe in the Green Deal and in the biodiversity strategy, Europe wants to protect at least 10% of the land, and can also the old woods. Could this be the so-called old growth forest or primary woods? And with the development in Hesse, would that help to get the 10%? As far as the old woods are concerned, it is very, very important to protect them. And in order to do so, we do need the comprehension or agreement, which the definition might be. The definition is not just coming from somewhere, but we have definitions that are already existing, and the colleagues in the Commission are working together with the experts of the member states in order to agree upon that, so that we can protect 3% of the primary woods. And the concrete question, I need to check that, but we are really working on it in order to have these definitions, and we will not reinvent them, but obviously we are oriented on what is already existing, like, for example, FAO. And this was also something in the conclusions, and the definition is not there yet. With the member states, like also with the guidelines for the different protected areas in this strategy that we adapted, we have goals like 30 and 10% for strict protection. And now, after long discussions, 1.5 years with our experts, we want to issue the guidelines. We want to finish them, first of all, in order to give criteria to the member states how these things have to be done and how we manage to have the lacking protected areas in order to have the 10 and 30% areas. And it's very important what the member states are doing, because I often hear, Brussels is coming and then tells us that you have to do this or that. And this is something very important from the member states. We help with the criteria, and if it is woods, if it is fields, or also wetland. This is something very regional and national. But I would like to re-ask the criteria. You are working on them. They are almost ready, and I have seen the draft last week, and we reflect the cooperation, and we were also agreeing upon it. Then in the next days or weeks before the end of the year, this will be published. They should give a clear idea and guidance to the different member states.
Antwortet beziehungsweise
I think we have answered the question, and we have certainly, in the way that we will have to wait for the criteria, we're approaching the end of the event, which is why I would like to take a step back from the discussion of the details, the nitty-gritty, as we say, and to just ask a very general question. If I, as a citizen of the European Union, if I were to walk through a forest in 5 years, how do I encounter consequences of the forest strategy? Maybe I'm not walking through the woods, maybe I'm just looking at something up on my computer, but where will I see tangible evidence of the forest strategy that you've decided now? In 5 years, I'm not sure you will be able to see anything. 10 years maybe, because the forests take a long time to grow back. And the measures that we're deciding on today, where you know how it works with legislation and in Brussels generally, this takes time. Things don't just happen from one day to the other. So I think it'll take 10, 20, 30 years to see tangible impacts of this. And this is more or less the same time frame we have for our climate goals as well. As far as the soil and ground are concerned, there's a new strategy as well. And this has an even larger time frame in order to recover. And the goal of our strategy, as I've mentioned at the very start, is that we will see more forests, more trees, and healthier forests, a more diverse forest, less monoculture. And for certain countries, I would like if they took Hessen as an example as far as sustainable forest management is concerned. There are other good examples. Hessen is not the only good one. Baden-Württemberg is also a state with a very good forest management. To just have a generally more sustainable forest management in order to make forests more resilient, more healthy, more robust, and that will enable the forests to help us reach our climate goals. And just a certain level of diversification for the owners of the forest, that this is not only used to generate wood, but that there could also be ecotourism where there's still room for growth, especially during the lockdown and during the corona crisis. People have rediscovered forests as an area that is close by where you can relax in. There are many aspects that have been forgotten that can be used in a better way. I certainly do hope so. Thank you very much, Mr. Conz. From your point of view, what's your perspective for the future? How will Hessen use the forest strategy? Well, I'm very certain that we can very strongly clarify that every new forest in the future that will be replanted in the areas where we lost forests in the past, that where we could just add a little European flag so that everyone can see that this is linked to Europe, because we have to create places where you can live Europe in order to overcome Euroscepticism. Because these are habitats, these are protected areas, and like the pictures at the beginning, those were beech forests that are part of the of World Heritage Sites, and all of this took a lot of concerted effort. There are many, many ways we have to connect all of these things that would allow us to say that this is something European, but we also have to confidently step forward and say we have taken care of European forests, just as the Commissioner suggested. We can also say now we have the justified expectation that others will protect their forests as well in order to advance and make progress together. Now you've mentioned the deforestation strategy. And that would certainly allow us enough of a topic to have a whole other event about, because it's something we'll not get into because we simply do not have the time today. But I would also like to draw your attention to the next event that will happen here in the representation of the state of Hessen, which will take place on the 30th of November at 12:30, AI for Tomorrow, Digital the Era, Roundtable Hessen. And I would like to thank you all for the interest and for the questions you've sent in. I hope that we were able to answer some of your questions, and that we all have learned a little bit more about the habitat and the living space that is the forest. Thank you all